Good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time of the day or night it might be where you are. You are listening to ATACS, video game podcast. Adults talk about cool stuff. This is episode number 2, November the 20th, 2016. We are exactly 2 weeks away from our inaugural episode, and now we are officially a real podcast. We've done this more than once, and by the rules of the internet, we now exist as a real thing, and soon there will be t-shirts, hats, and international fans, I'm sure.
Is that how this thing works?
That is how this thing works, and I don't know if you saw the rules of the internet or not, but now you know, along with everyone else. And that strange disembodied voice is Mr. Flex, who hails from the only state capital that North Carolina has, Raleigh.
I thought we had... Why are we limited to only one state capital? I don't know if I agree with this.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was something that the founding fathers did, which is not a rule of the internet, so you might be able to change it.
I mean, the only rules that are unchangeable are rules of the internet, so
yeah,
there might be a way around this.
There might be. You know what? I'm going to give that to you to research. I think North Carolina should be the only state with 2 state capitals.
Raleigh and Lexington.
Raleigh and Lexington. And, I mean, one of them is the state capital. The other one's the barbecue capital of the world. Yeah. So I don't know why they both can't be state capitals.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much 2 capitals already.
So I think you've got a strong case. So by ATACS episode 3, I expect to be able to introduce you from one of the 2 capitals of the state of North Carolina. Also joining us, we have Mr. Nate from the metropolis of Wendell, North Carolina. Hello, Nate.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. How are things going in your corner of the world?
Oh, they're okay. I'm a little disappointed now. I haven't gotten my official ATACS hat yet. Who do I talk to about this?
Well, you need to send a piece of regular postmark mail to former Vice President Dick Cheney. He's the chairman of the entire internet.
Wait, I thought that was Al Gore.
Well, see, Al Gore passed it on whenever he became Supreme Grand Chancellor of Climate. So now
But then they decided to not give it to Biden. Did they snub Biden?
Well, no. See, Biden's going to get it later, but he's still technically the real vice president. So we just have to deal with Dick Cheney for right now.
Okay.
But yeah. So you just send him a postmarked letter, and he will send you back your official ATACS hat from the internet.
Okay. All right. I will be absolutely sure to do that.
All right. And if any of you guys out there were wondering, no, we do not have official merchandise. We do not have an official website, nor do we even have really any official graphics.
Now I'm confused.
Don't worry about it. Basically, I was lying to you for the last 3 minutes and 5 seconds, but that's okay, because we are here to talk about video games, and that is exactly what we're going to do, because that's what our hobbies are. That's what we enjoy. And in a world full of darkness and misery, there's always the nice pale light of an LCD screen and some wonderful video games. So, Mr. Flex, what have you been playing lately?
I'm here to talk about games because I don't know how to do anything else.
That makes 2 of us.
But I have been playing video games. Probably the game I actually spent the most time on is the ongoing saga of Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. But I'm gonna hold on to my thoughts on that one until I finish or get close to the end of the game, because in 2 weeks' time that may be the only game I really have to talk about. So I'll save that one. But I did play some other games, including Owlboy from start to finish. I have completed Owlboy. Okay.
So what is an Owlboy?
He's a boy who's an owl.
Is he related to the boy that's made of meat?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, so Owlboy is, I don't know how familiar you guys are with it, but yeah, it's a 2D, I guess you call it like action platformer, side-scroller.
Is it a Metroidvania?
No, it's not. And people...
Is it the Dark Souls of boys?
Oh boy. I don't know if you want my Metroidvania rant or not, but yeah, I saw reviews that describe this as a Metroidvania, and I don't know what game they played, because there's nothing in this game that says Metroidvania to me, ignoring the fact that Metroidvania is a dumb term to begin with. But it's a more linear, like, action adventure style game. Like, you go through levels, you fight enemies, There are some light environmental puzzles. You beat bosses. Um, there's no grand world to explore. No character upgrades to get. There are probably 3 or 4 character upgrades to get in the entire game, and they're meted out at specific story moments. The upgrade. So the only abilities you have in the game. So you are Owlboy, and as an owl you can fly. The only attack you have is this little spin maneuver, but the bulk of your attacks and how combat works is you have it eventually becomes 3 characters, but at any time you can pick up one character and they have an attack they can do. So the first character you get, his name's Getty, and he just fires like a pistol or rifle or something. So as you're flying around, you use the right stick to aim his gun and the trigger to shoot. So primarily you're attacking through using these characters you pick up, and then as the story progresses, you end up getting a second and a third character, and you can switch between them on the fly. And their abilities also get used a lot in like the environmental puzzles and that kind of stuff.
So I'm not familiar with Owlboy at all, but everything that you just described just gave me kind of like a Mega Man kind of feeling. Would that be an accurate comparison?
Yes and no. I mean, yes in the way that it's a side-scrolling action game predominantly, but not structurally. I wouldn't compare it, because Mega Man's very much like, here's 8 levels with 8 bosses, and you're going to get a new gun from each of these bosses.
Okay.
So it's not quite that rigid of a structure, but in the sense of it being a general side-scrolling 2D action game, sure, that's not the worst comparison you could make.
So like, if you had to like say what the like core thing about Owlboy is, would you say that it's more like focused on action gameplay challenges, or exploring, or telling a story, or is it kind of just a little bit of everything and doesn't really focus on one over the other?
I think it's trying to do a little bit of everything, but for me, the only part that really worked was the presentation and story stuff. Like, I think in the long run, that's going to be Owlboy's thing. Is it looks gorgeous? Like, it has a really, it almost looks like stylistically, it almost looks like a 2D Wind Waker in a weird way. Like, it doesn't look like a Super Nintendo game or something necessarily, like or even an 8-bit game, like a lot of 2D indie games do nowadays.
Yeah, it's not really a throwback art style.
It's not really
kind of
meant to be a throwback, but yeah, there's something about its art style that like has that kind of whimsy and painterly look that Wind Waker does. But of course, this is a 2D game, and then its soundtrack is gorgeous. I really like that game's soundtrack. And they use the music really cleverly. Like, they use it almost in a way that like a big budget Pixar film or something would, of like they really punctuate like both action moments and sad moments and stuff with like music that really kind of becomes part of the scene, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So like, I think there's some really good stuff there. And then yeah, it tells a fairly touching story. Like, it's a fairly standard story, but they execute it with pretty good care. That works pretty well, and I think that's going to be the main thing for people, of like how much you get into the story is probably going to determine how much you like the game. Like, it's not a long game. It's like it probably took me like 8 hours or so, and it does have a touching story. You do spend a lot of time exploring and in combat and that kind of stuff as well. Like, there will be gameplay focused segments, and then there will be story focused segments, and it runs a fairly good split of that stuff. For me, I thought the controls were not perfect in a lot of spots, because you're having to juggle flying and aiming and shooting, and there's like a dodge maneuver, and then switching the characters, and like it never felt quite as responsive as I wanted it to. I mean, the game's not really hard enough that it really ever mattered. Like, the game's, I thought, was fairly easy overall. But just like the basic act of moving around and fighting enemies never felt amazing. Like, that to me was not the draw of the game. And the enemy designs also, because you don't really have a lot of moves at your disposal. Like, the enemies are generally pretty straightforward. Like, you're really just dodging. You're really just dodging and shooting. Like, there's not a whole lot of nuance to it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound super mechanically complex.
No, it's not.
But so like, what's the when you think of playing Owlboy, what's like the typical thing you picture doing? Is it fighting off a lot of enemies that are kind of running at you, or are you solving a puzzle, or running through traps, or?
It switches back and forth.
Okay.
Between, I mean, I guess that is one strength, is it doesn't sit on one thing too long.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Like,
okay.
none of it's mechanically complicated, but it does vary up some things. So like, if you're going through an area, like, all right, you might be in like some hallways fighting, and you might have some enemies to shoot. So like, these enemies are moving around and shooting you, and you're kind of dodging and shooting. And then there'll be like some blocks that you have to blow up, and so you have to figure out a way to get these bombs and move them through the environment and blow up these rocks. And then the game actually has quite a number of stealth sequences, which is weird. So there'll be like boxes or bushes that, like, if you move into, your character actually goes behind them instead of in front of them. So you hide behind that stuff and get through. And there are also some set PC moments. Actually, quite a few of those. So there's like a chase sequence that is almost like a runner style thing. And then there are some sequences where like there's some big enemy shooting stuff at you, and you have to dodge it as you're moving through environments. Or there's a handful. There's actually some platforming sequences too, like where you're not flying but actually platforming. They have a few ways that there's a few times during the game where they disable your ability to fly. The most straightforward example is whenever there's water coming down, like raining or a waterfall, you apparently can't fly in rain. So those they'll have platforming stuff, and and they'll have some other like dungeon specific, if you want to call them dungeon specific like puzzle mechanics that'll pop up here and there.
Right.
So it does bounce around a lot.
So I mean, is it something that you would recommend or recommend with reservations? I mean, it sounds like you really enjoyed the story, but some of the other parts might have been a little bit lacking. So
yeah, I think if the idea of like an 8-ish hour, like really heartfelt story that looks good, sounds great, and like if that sounds appealing to you, then I say absolutely go for it for whatever price that sounds worth it for you.
Okay.
I don't think the gameplay parts of it are going to blow anyone away, but they're also not really offensive. Like it's kind of a decent meat and potatoes 2D action thing.
All right.
So like I don't think the gameplay stuff's going to wow anyone, but I don't think it's going to offend anyone either. So I think the reason to jump in this game is for the story and the presentation stuff. So like if you want a nice heartfelt story that takes about 8 hours to play through, I say absolutely go for this game. Like I think it's got some good stuff in there.
All right.
I'm not gonna put my fist down and say everyone needs to play Owlboy, because I think there are gonna be plenty of people who are gonna play this and be like, I don't see what the big deal is. Like I don't think this game's gonna click with everyone, but I think there's some neat stuff there.
So a solid pickup, but not necessarily a game of the year contender.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, has anything else been taking up your time other than Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, which is ridiculous to say?
Yeah, that one takes up a lot of time. The other smaller game I've been playing is Thumper.
I have heard of Thumper. How are you enjoying it?
Which is defined by the developers as rhythm violence.
So, do you feel violence, and are you doing it in rhythm?
It makes my right thumb hurt when I play it, and I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. All I'm doing is pressing X on the controller, and it just... After 20 minutes, my thumb hurts. I don't get it.
Thumb violence.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't
it
know
is
if
a
the
game of
game's
violence.
just so intense that I'm just pressing X harder. Like that's the only thing I can think of that makes any sense. It's weird.
Yeah, you're just so into it. You're just jamming your thumb into the controller and damaging your own body.
That's
process.
literally the only thing I can think of. But yeah, that game's really cool. It is a rhythm game, and I don't know if either of you have seen videos of it or what it looks like, but
yeah, I've looked at it a little bit.
You're this giant beetle-looking thing, and it's just moving on this track naturally, and then there's just a bunch of cues to hit. Like there are these little lights that you press X on, and then there are some things you have to hold X to get through, and then there are these turns you have to hit left or right for, and then there are other things you can trigger to fly, and like a rhythm game, there are cues you have to hit on the rhythm. And the visuals are really gnarly. Like, I've seen some people describe it almost as like a horror game because there's just like a lot of really dark, menacing imagery going on, and then the music is also just like really, I don't really know what the right words to describe it are, but it's really like just heavy banging drums and like really dissonant sound effects, and like it's really kind of intense in an unnerving kind of way. It's definitely not a light and fluffy rhythm game.
Is that all original music for this game?
As far as I know, yeah. And
yeah.
So the interesting thing about this game as a rhythm game is, like, I feel like compared to most rhythm games, the music and sound in this game is not, it doesn't have as identifiable of a rhythm. Like, it's almost more a collection of sounds and than it is like actual songs, if that makes sense.
Right.
I mean, obviously the extreme of being like a song case would be like your Rock Bands of the world that are actual songs.
Yeah.
But I mean, even compared to stuff like a Rhythm Heaven or something, like it's feels like someone like went into their garage with like a weird assortment of instruments and just started just going with the flow, and whatever came out, they like if it had a reasonable beat, they put it in.
Right.
So
does that ever make it hard for you to like catch the beats?
Yeah. So that's probably my least favorite thing about the game is I feel like sometimes I'm not, like, most of the time there is a discernible beat and I'm pressing stuff along with that, but I feel like more than a lot of rhythm games, or at least more than my favorite rhythm games, I'm relying on the visuals at least as much as the music.
Right.
Because it doesn't always feel in line with the beat. Like, when I'm playing a Rhythm Heaven game, half the time I legitimately just close my eyes. Like, once I know the rules of the game and know the sound cues, it's almost easier to play with my eyes closed. Because the visuals just kind of distract you. But in Thumper, there's no way you could do that, like, without just memorizing the levels.
In Rock Band or Guitar Hero, you're relying on the visuals probably more than the sound.
That's probably true too. I mean, and that's one of the reasons I've not traditionally liked the Rock Band or Guitar Heroes as much, is because I don't feel like it relies on the music as much.
Yeah.
Among other reasons, but yeah, Thumper definitely has that as well. Like, there's a lot more in the visual cues than in the audio cues most of the time, I've found. But it is fun. I do enjoy it. It is also very hard, as rhythm games can be. It's something I found myself playing in more short bursts. I'll play it for like a half hour at a time. Be like, all right, I got through a few stages. My thumb hurts now. I'm gonna stop. And I'm absolutely terrible at it. Like, I'm beating the stages, but this game. The other thing about this game is it's very much seems like a score challenge kind of thing. Like, the people who get really into this game are going to be people who try and go for a high score and get S ranks on all the stages and all that stuff. Like, I'm beating the stages, but I'm getting poor scores on them. And I doubt I'll go back and try and actually master the levels and get high scores, because that seems, for some of those levels, seems really impossible. I'm sure there are people out there who will do it, but it would be an extreme challenge to get really good scores on some of those stages. But I do like playing it in short bursts, and I've definitely enjoyed going through it. It's not going to be something that, like, I'm going to be a diehard Thumper fan who plays it over and over and gets high scores, but I have really enjoyed going through it, the one playthrough.
Okay. All right. Well, I've seen a little bit about Thumper, and apparently it's a lot more fun in VR. So whenever you're ready to just throw down $1 million and
whenever I get my Vive or my Oculus or whatever, or my PSVR, I actually don't even know if it works on the PC ones. I've been playing it on Steam.
Okay.
I don't actually. I would assume it could work. It works on at least one of those.
You would think so, yeah, because it's on one. So why would you not?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know it got marketed with the PSVR primarily, but
yeah.
I would think it would work on one or both of the PC ones as well. If not now, at some point in the future. So.
Right.
I have heard that is one of the better VR games out this year. So.
Yeah, and once I figure out whether or not VR is the next 3D TV. I'll certainly add that to the list of things to check out, but it's still too early for me. But that's another conversation for another day. Nate, what's been going on, man?
Same old.
Same old.
I've been mostly, until Friday, just playing games that we talked about on the previous episode with Titanfall and Civilization, so I don't have much more to say on those. They're both still good.
Okay.
I also played a good chunk of Titanfall multiplayer.
Yeah, I actually have not played any more multiplayer, but I did finish the campaign, which I don't think I had finished as of last time. Which that campaign is pretty good overall, but I'm not going to spend any more time on that. But then Friday, Pokemon happened.
Oh, the Pokemans.
And so yesterday was probably the first time since summer where I just literally got up and sat and played a game for pretty much the whole day.
Nice.
Only Pokemon can do that.
Yeah, I've been playing a good amount of that Pokemon. I got Pokemon Sun. I went with the Sun version.
I am holding Pokemon Moon in my hand right now.
Yeah.
I don't know where my 3DS is.
But yeah, it seems like a good version of that Pokemon, as they tend to be, at least in my opinion. If you have played a Pokemon game before, you know what 98% of the game is.
All right.
And the other 2% is the sort of general good improvements that they tend to make with each new one.
Are there move tutors?
I assume so. I haven't found any move tutors yet.
Yeah, those usually don't come up till later in the game.
Yeah.
These are the burning questions that people need to know.
Well, I'm sure somebody knows. Go to Cerebi, they know.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Cerebi knows everything.
But yeah, I've just been kind of working my way through the campaign, catching new dudes.
Yeah, so how much? I mean, you said you played pretty much all day yesterday, so you're probably like, I don't know, probably put a decent chunk in the game. Like, any idea how far you are through it?
So there are 4 islands.
Mm-hmm.
The region that the new ones take place in is a Hawaii-inspired region called the Alola region, which is like Aloha, but with one letter changed because, Okay.
Do they say Aloha a lot, the NPCs?
They say Alola just like people would say Aloha as a greeting.
Oh, so in this Japanese Hawaii, they say Alola for hello and goodbye instead of Aloha?
Yeah, it's like if the people of Hawaii said Hawaii instead of Aloha.
Okay, so not only do you not know if they're saying hello or goodbye, they could also be referring to the region you're in.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. How does Japanese Hawaii compare to Japanese France and Japanese New York?
It's way more interesting than Japanese New York, but the past 2 games, which was X and Y, were in Japanese version of France, and this one in Hawaii. Like, I think that both of those just had so much more personality than a lot of the previous games.
Yeah, I think they found a good stride on the 3DS with their art styles.
Yeah, they seem to have found a good way to really focus in on a real world location and adapt Pokemon to that and give it a lot of personality in a way that they were losing a lot of the personality of Pokemon through maybe generations 4 and 5.
Right.
Where they were just kind of these bland pseudo-Japanese places, but they were trying to be a little different from the previous games, but they didn't really have a direction. So I think that's been a really good change for the series, and I hope they continue that. But yeah, like I was saying, there are 4 islands, and each island, instead of gyms, so you don't freak out, they changed the formula of Pokemon.
No, that's impossible. I mean, you can't. They didn't ask for anyone's approval before they did that. I mean, next thing you're going to tell me you can't pick Charmander as a starter.
Well, you can pick Charmander if you select the Fire Kitten and name it Charmander.
That's not the same thing. Just
what if you pick the water seal and name it Charmander?
I mean, I guess that would work. It would maybe be a little more confusing, but you do you.
So, who is your starter, and why didn't you name him Charmander?
I picked Poplio, which is the water starter.
Poplio.
He's the sea lion water starter.
It's Pikachu!
And I did not name him Charmander because I'm not a weirdo. So, yeah.
I never picked Charmander.
Instead of the 8 gyms and then the Elite Four, like all the previous games I've had, they have the 4 islands, and each island has a kahuna, who's like the boss of the island.
Alright.
Okay. The big kahuna. I get
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I see where you're going with that. Those clever Japanese people.
And then in order to challenge the kahuna, you have to complete a certain number of trials from one of their captains. So the first island you start on has one captain and then the kahuna. So you have to do one trial, and then once you complete that, you go and face the kahuna, and then move on to the second island. And I think somebody early in the game said there were 7 trials total. So I guess some of the islands have 2 or 3 trials before the kahuna. So I have done the first island and gotten to the second island, and I think I'm right at the first trial of the second island.
Okay, how many trials did you do on the first island?
Just one.
Okay, so
and
you've done one trial. I think you're at the start of the second one. Is that right?
Yeah, but I've completed one of the 4 islands.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. One question I had is, because this is very island based, I remember one of people's biggest complaints with Gen 3 Ruby Sapphire was just too much water.
Yeah.
Like, is there any sense of that in this game?
No.
In islands?
No, because they don't make you swim from one island to the other.
Okay.
There's a ferry that you can take.
So it feels fairly land-based?
It's just kind of disconnected land masses.
Okay. The islands are pretty big, I'm
yeah.
guessing? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the first one wasn't huge. It had 3 routes on it, and then some like side paths and little side areas, but not huge.
Yeah.
The second one seems a little bigger, maybe.
Okay. Any other like notable? I mean, it sounds like the trials aren't that dissimilar from the gyms. Like, you're still fighting trainers leading up to a big boss guy.
Kind of. So you didn't actually even have to fight the captain of the first trial to finish it. So it's like, I don't know if you guys care about spoilers for what the first trial is. It's nothing fancy.
I don't care.
Okay, I'll just say what it is because it's really nothing.
Yeah.
You just go into like this little cave area, and the captain says, "Okay, you have to find all of the young gooses, which is this game's Rattata."
Okay.
Oh no.
That are hiding in these little dens in this cave, and you have to find them and beat them all, and then you go to the back and you have to fight what's called a totem Pokemon, which is this game's version of boss fights. So when you do that, you go to the back and fight the totem Pokemon, which is the evolution of Young Goose Gumshoes, who when they first revealed the design of, everyone on the internet started saying he looks like Donald Trump, which they're kind of right. So look at a picture of that. But then he comes out and it's the totem Pokemon, and he's got all these buffs. So like, he had really high defense, and so it was like a decently high level evolved Pokemon with a really high defense, and he starts calling in henchmen like every couple turns.
Huh. Okay.
So he'll call out for help, and then another weaker Pokemon will join the battle against you.
Okay.
So kind of a weird thing for Pokemon to do.
Pokemon's usually one-on-one. I mean, they've had the horde battles. I guess it probably feels similar to that.
A little bit.
Okay.
But then what starts happening is, and I don't know if I just got lucky before this, but after that first trial, even just wild Pokemon out in the world will call for help.
Okay.
So you're like trying to catch something.
Are there like Pokemon gangs, and they like have to rally the troops and defend their turf?
So you're like trying to catch this Mudbray, and you get him down to low health, but then he calls in a buddy, and then you can't catch him because you can only throw a Pokeball out when there's one opponent. So then you have to kill the other Mudbray, and then while you're in the process of breaking down that guy, they call in another.
That seems really annoying.
It can get a little ridiculous if it doesn't go your way. Now sometimes they'll try to call in, actually probably about half the time, they'll try to call in a friend and it won't work. Like it'll just say nobody showed up. So it's not like crazy annoying, but sometimes it's kind of fun because you're just like standing against this wave of guys coming up to you. But and sometimes it can be a little annoying if you're trying to do something specific, like catch somebody.
Yeah. Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse has every now and then you'll fight a horde. Basically, what's a horde enemy?
Yeah.
And when you kill them, there's a chance that reinforcements can appear. So that just gave me like a weird flashback to those fights because like you just want to get through a fight or something, and then they just keep calling in new dudes, and that can get pretty frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. So anyway, I could literally keep talking about Pokemon for a long time.
The main thing, I mean, you're obviously still pretty early on in it. I'm sure you'll have more thoughts on it later, but so far, I guess my big question is, are any of the changes thus far meaningful? For better or worse, and if so, which ones are they?
I think.
I mean, because like Pokemon to me has always been an extremely iterative franchise. So like I would always say the newest Pokemon is the best Pokemon.
Right.
And like, I'm sure
that's
the case here as well. But like, is there anything substantial that's more than just like, oh, it has this kind of the standard Pokemon like quality of life improvements that they always do?
Yeah, it definitely has those. If you've caught a Pokemon and so your Dex knows what type it is, it will tell you on the battle screen if your move will be super effective or regular or not very effective.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's cool.
And when you catch a Pokemon in the wild, you can immediately put it into your party and send something else to your box if you want, which is a nice change.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
So those are the little incremental changes like you're talking about that make just quality of life better.
Yeah. Every Pokemon game has at least one or two of those changes that you're like, why didn't they do this 10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. Then they also removed HMs.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
There's no surf or fly or cut, that kind of stuff. Instead, you have ride Pokemon, which you unlock throughout the story. And so the first one you get is Tauros, the bull Pokemon from Gen 1.
Yeah.
And you can ride him around, and it's a fast way of moving around, kind of like a bike. Mm-hmm. But then he can also smash through rocks, like Rock Smash used to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think unlocking all of those basically replaces the HMs, and I like that better for not taking up move slots on your team.
Yeah,
and
it gets rid of the
has a lot more personality to it, where you're like using Pokemon in the world a lot more directly.
Right. Does any of that stuff get tedious? Because like sometimes when Pokemon gets into mini-game-ish style stuff, it can just like be really clunky.
That's not really a mini-game.
Well, I guess when I say mini-game, I just mean anything that's not moving around the overworld or fighting normal movement around the overworld or fighting battles. Like when you start having to like summon in other things or use HMs or
It's pretty quick. I would say
okay.
It's not any more clunky than using an HM was in previous gens.
I mean, using an HM was kind of
a
clunky.
little bit.
Yeah, I didn't really like the HMs, so I'm glad to hear that those have been phased out.
Yeah, and the main perk of that is just not having to carry HM mules in your party.
Yeah, definitely. So all of that stuff is good. I like the setup of the island and the world and some of the changes they've made to how you progress through the game. But I wouldn't say there's any one huge thing.
Yeah, it just sounds like a nice general refinement.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, unless you guys have other questions about it, is that the enemy faction, your Team Rocket substitute this time is Team Skull.
Alright, Team Skull.
They are kind of hilarious.
Okay.
They basically just walk around trying to act tough, and like every time they're talking or even doing the walking animation, they're like throwing their hands around like gang signs.
Oh no.
And
That's perfect.
And they basically just walking around like that, walking up to people and being like, "Yo, give me your Pokemon," and then everybody just ignores them and like.
Do they have some sick skull symbol or something they throw around everywhere?
Yeah, well, they have it on their hats, I think.
All right.
But yeah, they kind of just walk around and like the characters you are like talking to just kind of ignore them and are like, "Oh, don't worry, like they're whatever, like it doesn't matter." And then they get all offended because people aren't scared of them. it's kind of great.
I like how even Nintendo, or rather the Pokemon Company, how they've recognized that they're going to be factions are just a giant joke, so they've just turned them into a giant joke.
No, I like that. I like just embracing the dumbness of all
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen a single character in the game actually react like strongly to Team Skull whenever they show up. It's just like, oh, these guys again.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I don't really have any other questions for you. I mean, I'm not a huge Pokemon guy. I mean, I like to say that I played Pokemon Blue and Black, and that's too good of a story to change. So I'm just gonna leave it at Pokemon Black and Blue. You know, and it is always interesting though, Flex, like what you were saying, that the best Pokemon game is the most recent Pokemon game because they are just so iterative that you know it's not necessarily like you're gonna get a massively different gaming experience, but you can definitely follow the series along from start to finish, and you can see where they've made each one just a little bit more polished and with, you know, quality of life improvements without necessarily changing the entire formula.
Yeah, if you play 2 Pokemon releases back to back, you're going to be like, this is almost the same game. Like, yeah, they made a few little tweaks, but like it's still just Pokemon. But whenever you, like, Pokemon's been around long enough now that, like, if you look at Pokemon Red and then look at Pokemon Sun, like, the changes over time do add up. It's just each individual release changes very little at a time. Like, they really take their time making changes, and it's frustrated me before that they don't just make bigger changes more quickly. I don't know if they're just hesitant to make changes for worry of making too many changes, or if they just don't think of those changes as quickly as the players do. I don't know.
I think they're just being conservative, probably.
And I mean, I guess at some point you kind of have to get down to that is a money printing franchise. How much do you really want to putz with it? I mean. So I can certainly understand that, but Nate,
I'll have more questions for you when you play more of it.
Yep.
Have you been doing anything else, Nate, or is that pretty much the only thing that you really want to talk about this week?
That pretty much covers it. I'm liking that game, and I'm going to keep playing it, and I'll have more to say next time.
All right. So I actually last weekend I was gone to visit some family for early Thanksgiving. So I haven't been playing too much, but there is one game that I've been playing. That I kind of wanted to bring up and talk about, and that is The Witcher 3. I have been playing that on the PlayStation 4 console, and I got about maybe 5 or 6 hours in back over the summer, and then I ended up putting it down and just never picking it back up again, and then I decided to pick it back up, this past week, and, I'm starting to remember why I put it down, and it's for a really silly thing. The really silly thing is that is a game where you die. It just happens. It's not like a Dragon Age Inquisition. It's not like a World of Warcraft or any of the other like RPGs that you just sit down and it's basically just a time sink without a skill check. Witcher's got skill checks, and if you fail them, then you die, and that's the end of that. So I am very annoyed, not by the fact that I die. I'm very annoyed by the fact that it takes the PS4 2 minutes to reload the save. And I'm a guy that I really don't like dying in video games. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit it's like, life is hard enough. I just want to feel like a gosh damn superhero when I sit down and pick up a game controller. And I have been playing Witcher on the easiest difficulty. And it's just like, I'm trying to relearn the controls, and that's going fine. It's like, all right, I just mashed the square button, and that doesn't really work in a lot of scenarios. So now I'm trying to figure out what the other buttons do. But yeah, I mean, I get perturbed enough whenever I die, but then the fact the game gives me 2 minutes to think about how much of a dumbass I was is I don't know. Like I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna give it up or anything. It's just I'm already playing on the easiest difficulty. But if there was a way to turn it down more, I certainly would. Just because I'm not really looking for the challenge, but I really do enjoy the story. I really do enjoy the writing. I think that they have made a very intricate world, and you know, I've read some of the literature around, you know, Geralt, just in general. So I think I think he's a cool character. It's just I like walk into this cave and it's like, hi, there's a sea hag, and I'm like, I'm gonna stab her, and then she like blinks and I just explode, and I'm like, well, now I have 2 minutes to think about why not to run directly at the sea hag, you know.
Yep.
So
You can't just run at enemies and button mash your way through that game, Paul.
no, you can't, and
Yeah,
like it's fine. Those load times are horrible.
Yeah, I played on PC and I don't remember what the load times were like, but yeah, The Witcher has always had that franchise has always had like a more like slow-paced, methodical like style of combat.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's not Dark Souls or anything, but
no,
it is not a button masher generally.
no.
Although I will say that in those games, and I think this might be even more pronounced in the third one, that if you're, you know, exploring areas and doing some side quests, you'll get pretty overpowered.
Yeah. All of the Witcher games, and yeah, maybe even more so in the third one because it's such a big world. I thought all of those games got easier as they went because you get overpowered and you get new skills and better gear and like all that stuff, and like the enemies never felt like they scaled. Like I explicitly remember early boss fights in both The Witcher 1 and 2 that just gave me huge headaches, and then by the end of the game I was just breezing through everything.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I definitely remember that in the first game, like the boss in the like tutorial section I couldn't beat.
Yeah.
And then like by the end I was just one-shotting everybody because I had just put all my points into strength. So I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing that I think that I'm a little screwed up on right now is I was apparently critical pathing the game back in the summer without really realizing it. And then when I sat down this past week to play, I'm like, well, man, I don't remember how any of this stuff works, but I'm like standing right next to this quest marker. Let me just go here. And it was like the next quest in the main story. And now I'm in like a main story dungeon that I can't really get out of. And I've got like the +2 stick of sharpness. And that's all I got against all of these dudes. And it's like, you know, this would have been a lot easier if I would have just spent some time, ran around. I mean, because, you know, there's intricate crafting systems, there's intricate alchemy systems. Man, my inventory is full of shit that I don't even know what it does. And you know, like, that's kind of the problem, is you can't just get through the game by, you know, like you say, button mashing, or by ignoring those systems. Like, I mean, you do need to craft, and you do need to do alchemy, and if you don't, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, and I bet you could get through the game, especially on the lowest difficulty, without doing a lot of side stuff. But yeah, you might still want to do some crafting, and I think the bigger hurdle is actually probably just the combat system. Like I like The Witcher 3 a lot, but my biggest complaints are, like, I think the combat can be kind of clunky, and you kind of have to learn how to like deal with the way it, like, just the feel of the blocking and the attacking and the dodging. Like there's a very like particular way you have to go about managing that stuff that is not always as responsive as I think it could be, and is also not always as intuitive as I think it could be. Like I think that's the one big rough spot of that game. Like, I mean, that said, I still don't think the game is that hard overall. Like, I think if you just, because like I think Nate played on the same difficulty as I bumped it up 1 from the default. And I never had a big problem with that game. To be fair, I did a fair amount of side stuff, but like I think if you get used to like the kind of combat it's asking for you to perform, I think once you get over that hump, I don't think it should be that challenging anymore.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a block button until literally right now. That might change some things.
Yeah, blocking is going to help.
You want to block a lot in that game.
No, I mean, like, the whole thing I've been doing is I've been just, like, jumping around like a madman on meth and then just smashing the light attack. And, I mean, and that works for guys that are, like, you know, little, because I just, like, dance around the screen like Batman in, like, Arkham City or something and then just murder them all. But then when it's something that's like, hey, I'm big, and I'm like, hey, I'm dead.
Witcher combat has always been, in all of the games, been way more about blocking and parrying and dodging and then waiting for your opportunity to strike.
I'm gonna go try that. I'm gonna go try that as soon as we're done here because
and use your magic spells. They're very powerful.
Yes, the magic's very powerful. Alchemy is also very powerful. If you look through that system, it does take a little bit of getting used to, though.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll actually start streaming that on Twitch somewhere, and then someone can look in and tell me how like just what I'm doing wrong, because it's kind of one of those things. How how sometimes when you like sit down and you play a game and you're like, I know this shouldn't be this hard, so I'm obviously missing some like basic gameplay. I think I just was missing the block mechanic the entire time. I don't know how that happened.
Missing block will definitely make that game harder.
That might explain a few things, but other than that, the stuff that I've been playing is the stuff that we've already kind of talked about, and I don't really want to get back into that. I'm still stuck in a very big Stardew Valley hole, and I am A-okay with that because that is a wonderful game to relax to after a hard day at work. But there's not really much else to talk about here other than the fact that it's a good game. So I think that's gonna wrap up our game section. We're going to take a quick break, and then unless you guys have anything else that you want to jump on real quick, then we'll come back with news.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe do a what's coming up on our gaming plate.
Oh,
which I guess actually may just be continuing playing stuff we're playing in this case.
I mean, I guess for me, the only thing that's coming up is I'd said last podcast that I was going to try and wrap up Trails of Cold Steel, and with traveling to see family, and then having my PC and my PS4 available to me, I haven't really had a chance to pick up the Vita. Plus, my wife's been playing. She has a new game that she's been playing on that I don't remember the name of. But so every time I turn around, she's sort of doing that. So yeah, for me, I guess just Trails of Cold Steel. I'm gonna still try and finish wrapping that up, and I'm gonna try that blocking thing in that Witcher and see if that makes the game any easier. Flex, what do you have coming up?
Now that I've finished Owlboy and basically done with Thumper, I'm gonna charge hard on Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. I literally have no idea how far I am in that game because for some reason there is literally no I've looked on the internet to try and get a sense of where I am in that game, and apparently nobody has covered this game at all, and there's no walkthroughs or anything out there to give me a sense. So I have no idea how far I am. But I'm pretty much putting my main focus into that. I do have Pokemon Moon and I want to play it, but I don't plan on starting it until I get through Shin Megami Tensei.
Okay.
The other game I have is Picross 3D Round 2.
Okay.
And I've done the tutorials in that, but I think that'll be a good short burst puzzle thing to play during Thanksgiving travels. Okay.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like fun. I know that I've listened to several gaming podcasts and read several gaming news websites that really love that game series.
Yeah, Picross is the best.
Yeah. So, Nate, what's coming up on your plate other than a whole bunch of kids that are going to be ready to get out for Christmas break?
Definitely that, and definitely a lot of Pokemon. Other than that, I might try to squeeze in a couple of short games. I have Super Hot and Inside from earlier in the year that I really want to get to sooner rather than later.
All right.
And then that Final Fantasy 15 is out soon, but I don't know when I'll actually get to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll be curious how that turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Final Fantasy 15 will be one of those games that I can tell you that me and my wife will be sitting on the couch. She will be playing Final Fantasy 15, and I will be playing Trails of Cold Steel on the Vita. That's what's going to be happening for the next couple weeks for me. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back with the news. Welcome back to ATACS, Episode 2. I don't think I introduced myself at the very beginning of this podcast, by the way.
I'm
Paul.
Host.
I am your host, Paul from Atlanta.
The mystery man.
The mystery man, the man behind the mystery van. Anyway, so we're going to get into our news segment, and we're going to do that with Mr. Flex and Mr. Nate. And the first story that we think is the most important story of the last 2 weeks is actually a Eurogamer article that asks a question that Flex, why don't you just go ahead and tell us what's going on with this PS4 Pro business?
Yeah, and I don't, and to be clear, I don't know if this was like Eurogamer was the first or biggest place to report on this. I saw this story popping up everywhere. This particular article just seemed to be like the best summary of it. I think Digital Foundry has actually probably done more work on this than anyone because that's what they do.
Right.
But yeah, so the PS4 Pro came out just over a week ago, so now it's finally in the hands of consumers. And the PS4 Pro is supposed to be like that half step up, like it's supposed to allow PS4 games to run bigger, better, smoother, and
it's got a lot of gigaflops.
Yeah, exactly.
know?
So yeah, it's supposed to make games look sharper, and it's going to have HDR lighting and allow some games to display at 4K and blah blah blah. All those fancy bells and whistles. So it's ironic then that apparently some games actually run worse on the PS4 Pro than they ran on the regular PS4. And it doesn't seem like it's a super widespread thing, but that's kind of a worrying thing when you release a new console that's supposed to be a strict upgrade over the old one, and then some games run worse on it.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, and just to provide a little background for anyone that might be listening that's not familiar with this, the PS4 Pro is supposed to be sort of a half step, right? Yeah. I mean, it is still a PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 games that come out will work on either the PS4 or the PS4 Pro. It's not a new console, but it is significantly more powerful than the PlayStation 4 base hardware.
It's similar to what Nintendo's done with their handhelds. A lot of the new Nintendo 3DS is it's a little bit more powerful of a 3DS, but it's still a 3DS. So this is still a PlayStation 4. It plays the same games. It's not a new it's not a new generation of hardware or anything like that. It's supposed to be just a bigger, beefier PS4.
Right.
And yeah, apparently some games run worse. It doesn't seem to affect every game. I've heard that The Last of Us Remastered and Watch Dogs 2 are some of the ones that struggled the most, and those games apparently have big frame rate issues, and just general performance issues through large parts of the game. Some games apparently do run better. I think Rise of the Tomb Raider I saw does actually run better on the Pro, and I'm sure some other games do as well, but it seems to be all over the place in a way that it's not the strict upgrade that we were led to believe.
Here's something that I'm not sure about, and maybe you guys can clarify this. I feel like when they were talking about the PS4 Pro from a marketing standpoint, there was games will have a switch that the developers can put in where it will use the Pro resources or not, depending on what hardware you're on.
Yes.
So is that surface to the user at all? Can I, if I have a PS4 Pro and I'm playing Watch Dogs 2 and it's running bad, can I switch it to normal PS4 mode?
I don't think you can.
Well, you can adjust the output. So, you can go into an options, and for, say, Watch Dogs 2, you can say, hey, Mr. PS4 Pro, instead of outputting a 4K signal, give me a 1080p signal, and then that can give you higher frame rates. There is some adjustability in the settings, but from what I've read, it's not as intuitive as it probably should be.
Yeah, you can't just tell it, hey, treat this like a
right.
I
mean, to be fair, none of us have a PS4 Pro. I don't think, as far as I know, none of us have fiddled with one.
Nope.
But I believe that, once the game connects to the internet and gets its patch and it detects what version of the console you're on, I think once it knows that, it's going to run with it. And there may be some settings you can fiddle with, but I think once it knows you have a PS4 Pro, it just acts like you have a PS4 Pro. And it's not every game. I think their mandate was every game released after, I don't know, September 1st or October 1st, or
right.
There was a date they set that every date released after this has to have that toggle of
Watch Dogs 2 is in that category.
Yeah, Watch Dogs 2, and some games from before then have been updated as well. It was optional for those. I mean, but a lot of Sony games did get the update, like Last of Us Remastered, and I think Infamous Second Son also got the update. And I remember seeing Shadow of Mordor got the update, which was a little weird because that game's 2 years old and not a Sony game. But yeah, so any game like released this fall and going forward will have that mode, and anything before that is iffy. But yeah, my understanding is there's like some switch in the game, and like once it detects which console you're on, it just runs in that mode.
Right.
And my guess is, so the best case outcome I would think was that this is just some slight difference in the hardware that like developers just haven't accounted for, and is causing some weird like instability or incompatibility that could be fixed with a patch. And like once we go through a few months of these growing pains of developers figuring out, that it'll just stop being an issue.
I guess that wouldn't be too bad if that was the case, but
yeah, but it like the more worrying worst case scenario is that there's just something wrong with the PS4 Pro that makes some things hard to do.
Yeah, but you know, I'm going to go back to the old argument that I ascribed to for a while, which is if you want a system that just plays video games, you get a console because it just works.
Right.
And we're talking about day one patches. We're talking about hopefully they can patch the PS4 Pro to make it work better. Like we're talking about a lot of things to where it's like you've almost got like you have just as many headaches as a PC. And yes, I'm exaggerating. PCs still probably have more headaches, but you have less user configurability. Like I can't fix it. You know, like with a PC, if I've got a game running poorly, you know, on my $9,000 rig, you know, at least I have some way to get in there and to fiddle with the drivers, which is annoying, or to, you know, fiddle with the game settings, which is annoying. But if you are someone that bought Watch Dogs 2 for the PS4 Pro and it's not working well for you, then you literally just have no other options but to wait for Sony or for Ubisoft or whoever to release a patch. Yeah. And I really feel like that, you know, the things that have set consoles apart, which some of them, you know, some of those things have been the online services. Some of them have been their simplicity. You know, some of it's been the fact that you can buy a console and for the next 5 to 7 years, you're good to go. Like a lot of those arguments are starting to melt away because now we have half-step consoles. And the half-step consoles are introducing a fork in the hardware that developers have to account for, and that means that the games have more potential to have bugs. And like when you start adding a lot of this stuff up, I mean, at some point, and I think it's different for every person, right? Like this isn't going to be a universal truth, but that bar is sliding more and more to where it's like if I'm just a regular dude who doesn't want to really mess with the technical side of a PC. I mean, with the advancements of Windows and the cool form factors of small PCs, like the home theater PCs, it's actually starting to where you can tip that scale and say, I'm just going to buy a home theater PC, put Steam on it, and buy a wireless controller, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
You know, and stories like this really is not helping that argument.
Yeah, we've been on this trend for a while now, where consoles are becoming more PC-ified and PCs are becoming more console-fied. Like we're starting, like they're both coming towards a middle ground from opposite ends of the spectrum, and like I feel like at some point, like everything's just going to be a gaming machine.
Right.
And like that,
which is wonderful.
Like PCs are getting less complicated and consoles are getting more complicated over time. So like they're going to find some middle ground someday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that it's kind of obvious to say that we're in a spot right now with consoles where we've never been before. And you know, there's a lot of talk in a lot of very respected places that the Xbox One and the PS4 and the Switch, those may be the last sets of consoles, which I say that Nintendo's going to do their own thing for the next 100 years.
I think Nintendo exists in their own realm.
I mean, but you know, like the same console generations, like the Xbox to the 360 to the Xbox One, there might not be a successor to the Xbox One. There might not be a successor to the PS4. You know,
I think, I think ultimately, I mean, the clear thing they're trying to chase is more of like the Apple iPhone model, where it's just constant revisions, and who knows how long that's going to be viable. I mean, a lot of people a few years ago said were wondering, like before the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, people were wondering if consoles even had a place, and then both of those consoles came out, and both of them have sold incredibly well. So
Sure.
the market, like consumers in the market have shown that there still is a demand for this stuff. But I think from now going forward, like every time we're ready for new hardware to come out, there's going to be those question marks of like, do people still really want this stuff? And I think until the actual machines come out and we see if people buy them or not, like we won't actually know the answer. I think it's getting harder to say for certain that consoles actually have a place nowadays.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much all of my thoughts on that one.
Pretty much all I had to say as well. Is it's just one of those things of like new hardware, not you come stumbling out the gate in ways.
I mean, that's just a real shame for the people who bought that as a like super enthusiast who wanted the best hardware. If they're not getting that return back, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll fix it.
Yeah, hopefully they'll fix it.
Well, I mean, tying into that story a little bit, so Ubisoft has released a remastered Assassin's Creed 2 for the Xbox One. The only problem is that the remastered version somehow looks worse than the original. There's a picture floating around the internet that if you've gone to Reddit at any time in the past week, you've seen. It's of a very interesting character model with well-defined eyes and extremely red lips. And you know, it's a little more than that. Whenever you start digging into this story, it's almost like someone went back and just made things worse for this game. It looks like they've removed some frames from Ezio's wall climbing animation. It looks more like almost like a port rather than a remaster, but they're calling it a remaster. So I just kind of look at this and I go, you know, number one, what are you guys doing? And number two, how did this slip so far past your internal testing folks that it got to this point?
I mean, I understand making things is hard, but it feels super sloppy. It also makes me wonder if like they realized they didn't have an Assassin's Creed game this year.
Yes.
So they just kind of rushed this thing out and maybe didn't really give it the proper carrot it needed to not look terrible.
But that's the reason they don't have an Assassin's Creed game out. They've rushed the last 14, and they all got creamed in the market. So instead of learning your lesson, you're going to just rush out a remaster that looks just like garbage. I mean, come on, guys. You're smart. You know better than that.
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head when you said it's a port and not a remaster. I think they probably, I mean, I obviously have no idea exactly, but if I had to guess, they probably like put some small number of people and resources on this so that they could release something this year. I can't imagine that they put a lot of time or effort or care into actually remastering this to make it good for new consoles and new customers.
Yeah,
they just probably wanted to get it out there. That's
like
the only reasonable explanation that I can think of.
I get the impression this is just a really quick port job. So Nate, given that there's not an Assassin's Creed game this year, and you play one every year, are you going to play Assassin's Creed 2 remastered? Or maybe even substitute with Watch Dogs 2.
No.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of me understands that making games is hard, but at the same time,
when you're one of the biggest publishers in the world, which Ubisoft absolutely is, like you would expect them to put out quality products that have been given the time and care they deserve.
Yeah, I don't think given the series and this developer and the situation that this game is coming out in, I don't think that they could try to use the making games is hard argument. Like, I just don't think that's valid unless they prove somehow that was the case. I think this is just a clearly lazy rush thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know making games is hard, and I'm sure there are very tricky parts of porting a game from 2009 to 2016 machines, but
For sure.
there are problems that a company like Ubisoft should be able to solve, and they've probably put out other games this year that were even harder, had even harder problems. So
I don't think that's a valid defense for this game, for this developer, for this series right now.
No, and to me, it, obviously there's no way to know. We're just speculating, but but it reeks to me of, sometimes stuff is hard, right? But other times you just look at the basic errors and you go, guys, you weren't even trying, and like, I'm not gonna say that they didn't try, because I don't know, but like, I can certainly forgive certain oversights when it comes to gameplay or to cinematic quality. Like, sometimes stuff you just run out of time, and then that's how you get the back half of Mighty Number 9. But you really can't look at this. No reasonable person at this company looked at this before it went out to be circulated for purchase and went, by God, this has the Ubisoft stamp of approval.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way they didn't know about this before it went out, which makes me think that, like, they had a date that they were adamant about hitting, and they were just there. My guess would be like, well, this is going to take longer to fix. That would make us miss the date. It's more important to hit the date, and we'll patch it later. Like, that would be my guess.
And that's exactly why their last 4 Assassin's Creed games or whatever have been bad. It's because of that exact sort of, like, we got to hit the date, which I
mean, that's their franchise for them that prints money. So, like, in the long run, hitting the date with bugs is probably going to make them more money than delaying and not having bugs.
Yeah,
and they're a business,
right.
Which means they're all about making money.
Yeah, that's that, and it's hard enough to make money making video games right now. So I guess you kind of have to look at the other side of that.
Oh, it's a total bummer, and I wish they didn't do it that way. But if I had to make a guess, that's probably how that happens.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of printing money, there's a rumor that's circulating around the internet that says that there will be some sort of third version of Pokemon Sun and Moon that will be coming to the Nintendo Switch in March-ish, is the rumor that I saw, which is around when the Switch is supposed to be released. So I'm actually super interested in that, because part of the thing that's kept me away from Pokemon games is, I do like playing handheld games. I don't like playing 40 or 50 hour handheld games on a 3DS. It's just not for me.
I've actually found, weirdly enough, over the past, 5-6 years, that I enjoy playing JRPGs on handhelds more than consoles. For some reason, that ability to just pop in and out of rest mode, be it on the 3DS or the Vita, like, super quick, makes me more inclined to just sneak in a half hour or an hour here and there.
There is a usability to just closing your 3DS at any time.
Yeah.
For like a long game like that, where you can literally feel like you can pick it up and play it for 5 minutes and then just close it again, and you don't have to go find a save point or whatever.
Yeah, but not to derail you, Paul, I know exactly where you're going with this, so continue.
I do too.
Yeah, I just think it would be super cool if Pokemon came out for what would amount to a home console. And I mean, I know that the Switch is going to be both, and that's fine, whatever. But the thought of me being able to play Pokemon on my television with a standard controller, I mean, that's something that I think is at least worth talking about, even though it's just a rumor right now.
Yeah, that was actually one of the first things I thought when they unveiled the Switch. Is like, oh, all of the previously console-only games can now be played on the go, and all the previously handheld-only games can now be played on a TV. And obviously their biggest handheld-only franchise has been the core Pokemon games. So, like,
do you mean Monster Hunter?
Well, I guess I should say Nintendo-developed games.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I don't know which sells better between Monster Hunter and Pokemon.
Yeah, worldwide, I don't know, but.
Yeah. Japan, Monster Hunter's probably bigger. Everywhere else, Pokemon's probably bigger, but I don't know if you combine it all.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think people will definitely be excited for Pokemon whenever it comes to the Switch, whichever version that is. I mean, we all, I think, once they showed what that console is, knew that that would happen at some point. I think the rumors about it being the third version, so every Pokemon game comes out with the two parallel versions, your red, blue, your silver, gold, and then a third version later on that kind of takes things from both and adds some improvements and different stuff to it. The fact that they would have that third version out that soon sounds a little crazy to me. But I could maybe see it coming out next fall. I don't know. Hearing that the third version of the games that are just coming out this weekend will be out in March sounds a little quick.
Yeah, and that's kind of why why I'm certainly clear to say this is rumor. There's not an actual story on this yet. I mean, this, for all we know, this was a random guy in a forum somewhere that went, this would be really cool, and it somehow got picked up. But yeah, I mean, I could certainly see it making more sense to delay in the fall, unless they're doing something which is more like a straight port, and then they just release that right alongside with the Switch. But really what it boils down to, we don't know. It makes sense for Pokemon to come.
I mean, if they want the Switch to come out and make a splash and attract people, like if they launch with a Mario and then they obviously got Breath of the Wild in the works, and then if they get a Pokemon on that thing, like if they hit those big pillars in year one, like that's going to be a huge push for the Switch.
Yeah, I absolutely think they need to have Pokemon on that thing by the end of the year. And whether that's Pokemon Stars is the alleged name of this next one, or if that's like
that makes sense. I was trying to think what the name would be for the third wheel of Sun and Moon, and I didn't even think of Stars. That makes perfect sense.
That's pretty cool, actually. All right.
So whether it's that or if they do, I actually, when they first unveiled the Switch, I was thinking it would be a home run for them to remake Red and Blue for the Switch.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah, that would be a home run. They should know what they should do. They should release the game they never released, which was Pokemon Z, the third wheel of X and Y.
Yeah.
Put that out on the Switch. Just bring it full circle.
Oh no! Now we're into bad ideas, guys. We need to calm this down.
But yeah, I think they would be stupid to not have a Pokemon game out next year. I don't know exactly what that will be or at what point in the year.
I think a third wheel for Sun and Moon makes sense.
Yeah, that would make sense. I would be surprised if it was in March, but maybe they'll surprise me.
Yeah, and we're talking about the stuff coming out for the Switch, which that kind of changed into the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, which was it's been reported, again, this is a Eurogamer article, I don't know where it came from first, that Zelda Breath of the Wild will miss the Nintendo Switch launch. And I kind of have a couple of thoughts on this, and then I'll get out of the way for you guys to talk about it. But to me, there's a pendulum, right? On one side of the pendulum, you have this Assassin's Creed 2 remake that we just talked about, right? This is a rush job. You guys didn't spend any time on it. You just threw some stuff out there because you're trying to make a quick buck. It's happened before. It'll happen again. Lots of developers are guilty of it. But then on the other side of the pendulum, you have Duke Nukem Forever, which is a game that it completely misses its window, right? There was a time back,
it missed all the windows.
It really did. But, culturally and in the gaming world, there was a time that Duke Nukem was actually a pretty important figure in gaming, if you can believe it. People really enjoyed playing Duke Nukem Forever. Not Duke Nukem Forever, sorry. They really enjoyed playing what's it called? Is it Duke Nukem
3D?
3D, there you go.
Yeah, that was
so like for a long time, it's like, when's the next Duke Nukem game coming out? And it just missed all of its window, and it was horrible. It was just the worst thing in the world. And obviously Zelda is not Duke Nukem, right? But at the same time, how long has Nintendo been developing this game? I mean, it's got to be getting into Last Guardian territory by now.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you mentioned Duke Nukem Forever, I was about to say, or Last Guardian, which is actually coming out this year.
And I mean, like maybe, you know, one of the things that I've always heard is that a game only releases once. Yeah. You want to delay it, you want to make it good, but at some point,
I mean, there's that famous Miyamoto quote of a good game or a delayed game is eventually good. A bad game released now is bad forever, or something like that. But
right,
yeah,
but I mean,
it's a weird spot for Zelda in particular because, like, first of all, it wouldn't be a Zelda game if it didn't have at least half a dozen delays. Because literally every console Zelda game gets delayed multiple times. But this one,
except Majora's Mask.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that one, they pulled an Assassin's Creed Remastered on that one. But yeah, like all the console games since Majora's Mask have been delayed multiple times apiece. But this one has two things that make it a little different. One, a Zelda game, like, this is the first console Zelda since Skyward Sword, which was in 2011. So already this is one of, if not the biggest gap time-wise between console Zelda games the series has ever seen. So
I think it is the biggest.
Yeah, so it's already taken a long, long time. And within that gap, the entire lifespan of the Wii U has come and gone. So they have had a full console cycle come and go without a Zelda game. And then on top of that, like, this is because of all the Wii U's struggles, like, launching the new Switch with a Zelda game would be huge for that system.
It would be.
So missing the launch, like, I mean, you know, if it only misses the launch by a month or two, like, that won't be that big of a deal. So it'll, you know, if this ends up being true, it'll depend on how big the delay is. But, like, it's one of those things that, like, it just keeps slipping, and I think it's hurting their platforms.
I think that's really the question, though. Like, I think it's a pretty good bet at this point that there's a Mario game slated for that thing's launch.
Yeah.
The Switch's launch. And so, if you think that they could launch with a new Mario game.
Yeah, if they can launch with Mario in March, and then
maybe some new or like redone versions of some Wii U games, like Splatoon is a pretty good bet.
I've also seen rumors that a remastered Splatoon could be a pack-in for that system.
Right. So like they could have a decent launch, especially with a new Mario without Zelda. And if it's only a 2 or 3 month delay to where it's coming out in the summer, or at the beginning of the summer, then I don't think that that's a big deal for the Switch.
Yeah.
If they push it to fall, that's maybe a bigger deal, and they might lose some initial console sales.
Yeah.
But it just depends on the length of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I just feel like that at where was, and this is something that no one's ever gonna know the answer to this question, right? But like at some point along the way, there was something that Nintendo or Miyamoto, someone somewhere, didn't like what they were seeing from Breath of the Wild, because this game has gone through, which Zelda's a special case, right? But it's gone through what amounts to almost 3 full development cycles now. You know, so they've put a lot of work into this game, and you know, I'm sure when it comes out, we're all going to really enjoy it. But at the same time, it's like, what if we don't?
Yeah,
you know, like, what
yeah.
if it's bad?
Like, Zelda has been a really weird franchise for Nintendo for a long time, because it's like the only franchise that they still make regularly that they just don't seem to be able to hit their dates, and then like it also, like, the identity of Zelda is also a big question mark right now. Like the past handful of Zeldas have kind of gone all over the place in a weird way, and so like with these games constantly getting delayed and like not knowing the direction of the franchise, it's like they're placing so many bets with how long it takes to make the game, and it's like it's just kind of a weird thing, because like you think of their Pokemon and Mario and like their other big franchises, like they pump those games out pretty quick, and they hit their dates, and they're usually of a good enough quality. But like Zelda is one that they never seem to really have the ground under their feet when it comes to like launching Zelda games.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know.
Hopefully it'll come out not too long after the launch, and it'll be good.
Yeah, and we'll see.
You could maybe say that, like, and I'm trying to think if there are any better examples of this, but this, I mean, Breath of the Wild could literally be Nintendo learning how to make an open world game.
Could be, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this, from everything they've been saying, this sounds like the biggest departure from the series' roots that Zelda's ever had. So, like,
Yeah.
The explanation for it taking that long could be as simple as that. But
I'm trying to think, and I can't think of any other Nintendo-made games that really are of that sort of modern open world style that this game might be going for more. And that means that there's a whole set of challenges that they have to figure out and do in a way that Nintendo likes, which is a different way than other people like.
And it's also there. I mean, it's easy to forget because the Wii U was kind of a non-factor, but like Nintendo's still not done HD games in a lot of their franchises. So like making like not only is this probably one of the biggest and most open worldy games they've ever made, they're also doing it in HD for the first time. So there's a lot of stuff they probably have to learn.
Yeah. And you know the thing with the open world, I've got a little bit of a difficult time, you know, sort of buying that one, which you could very well be correct, but you know,
Nintendo's a slow-moving company, Paul.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, but I mean, like Skyrim came out in 2011. That was 5 years ago.
Yep.
Which you know that was
Zelda came out.
Right, and so like you know Skyrim was hailed as this like revolution in open world gaming. You know, whether you think it's good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, it had a lot of critical acclaim 5 years ago. In the last 5 years, like I swear, has Ubisoft put out a game that wasn't open world? Like, I mean, we've seen
even their racing games are open world.
Yeah, So like when
everything's open world now, it's crazy.
Yeah, so whenever it's like, well, Nintendo has to figure out how to do open world. It's like, you know, you're right. They do, and I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that this ground has been tread by a lot of other developers, and they could not necessarily copy, but take some cues from what all these sorts of games do well. You know, if they're just locked in a box and they never look outside of their box and they're trying to reinvent the wheel, then yeah, I can see why this would take so long. And if that's what they're doing, then God bless you. You're doing this on hard mode, you know. So, you know, we'll wait. We'll see. It's gonna come out sometime. I'm hoping it comes out during the Nintendo Switch console cycle. But we'll just have to wait. You know.
Yeah. I didn't actually notice if this said anything about the Wii U version getting delayed or not. So now I'm wondering if the Wii U version could actually come out earlier than the Switch version.
Yeah, I
didn't see.
Either way, just another quickie. Since we've been talking about Wii U stuff, there was also a rumor. I didn't put a story in here, but there was also a rumored price leak for the console.
What was that? I didn't see that one.
Yeah, they had two. The rumor speculated that there were two models, that there would be a $250 base model and a $300 deluxe model that would have more storage space and come with the game.
That's really competitive pricing. So
the headline of the rumor was basically like it'll be cheaper than the Wii U.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be really aggressive with the pricing for this thing, regardless if that rumor ends up being accurate or not.
That would be something.
Yeah. Our last bit of news before we get out of here is really quick. Persona 5 has been delayed again to April, and well, the word is, and this does make sense. This game is enormous. It has an absolute metric ton of dialogue and all sorts of things, and the localization is taking longer than what they originally thought.
Yep.
And in order to say they're sorry to all of us people that do not speak Japanese, they are including dual audio in the game now, so you can have Japanese voices with English subtitles, which is the way that a lot of anime fans prefer to watch their anime. So with Final Fantasy 15 right around the corner, hopefully that doesn't get delayed again, along with the rest of the holiday release schedule, I don't really have a lot of opinions about Persona 5 being delayed.
Yeah, I threw this story in because like normally I don't care about delays, but I threw this one in here because like this game is done, and like I understand that there's a lot of stuff to translate because it is Persona games are very dialogue heavy, but this is one of the few delays that I actually am really bummed about because I want to play this game.
Yeah, I want to play it a lot too, but I mean, at least the game's already out, so we do know it exists.
Yeah,
you know?
like the game's done. It's been out in Japan for like 2 months now, so like we know the game's done. They just got to translate it all.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to like that there's still a substantial lag between Japanese and American releases or Western releases for a lot of these games, which that seems like a weirdly archaic thing to still be dealing with. But yeah, I threw this I threw this story out there legitimately because like this is the like once a year delay that legitimately bummed me out.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, well, I think that's about all that we have, at least all that's coming from me for this podcast. Nate, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you didn't get a chance to speak about when we were going over stuff?
Nope, I think we covered it. We'll probably continue to get more of these Switch rumors and leaks and stuff, and I want to know more about that thing, so I'm waiting for January.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. Flex, do you have anything else that's just weighing on your mind that we haven't had a chance to talk about so far?
I ain't waiting to January. I got games to play now.
Very true. Well, so I am Paul, your host from Atlanta. We're going to sign off with Flex from Raleigh and Nate from Wendell, and I'm going to go figure out how blocking works in Witcher 3. So thanks a lot for tuning in. We will be more than likely having episode 3 in about 2 weeks, and then after that, we'll see how it goes with all the holidays and the traveling and things like that. But thanks for listening to ATACS, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.